It's time for Reason.
But if they disagree with you, then you're not actually promoting freedom of speech, you're actually promoting hate speech. Because in today's times, anything that offends you, that makes you feel uncomfortable, is no longer a freedom of speech, but is now hate speech. If you say, I love Donald Trump, that is now considered fascist hate speech because you're probably a white supremacist and you don't have any place in society.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
That's what I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heartland of America, literally right here in Wichita, Kansas. Broadcasting across the entire Mid-America region on the entire Mid-America network, right out of the Big Talker KQAM here in Wichita, Kansas, simulcasting on KGPT TV, channel 2610. Welcome aboard. Good morning. It's great to have you along today. It is a Tuesday. Can you believe that we have already gone through the first day? We are pumped up. We are ready to go. We are excited. You're starting off your day. We get you started off better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink, because that's the way we roll right here on the Voice of Reason. Welcome in, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, the Facebook Live is up and rolling today. We had an issue yesterday. Internet back up, rolling, ready to roll. Please like it, share it. Let's spread the word. Let's advance conservatism on a daily basis. Got to do a shout out. Listener Scott swinging by this morning, bringing us some breakfast, getting us going this morning. We appreciate that very much as we kick off a day. It's going to be a good day. I tell you what, it's going to be a good day. Start off with a nice breakfast like that. We appreciate that very much with the listener interactment and with bringing us some goodies like that. We do very much appreciate that. We have the internet back and going, so that way we got Facebook Live ready to rock and roll today so everybody can check it out. It's already blowing up. We appreciate that very much as well. We have the sports guys that I love giving a hard time to over on our sister station on KGSO as they are trying to salvage their brackets for March Madness. And if you watch mine, now mine's busted. I already know mine's busted. I don't think I have anybody in the Final Four in there anymore. It's okay, though. It's okay. I'm not a sports guy. I never tried to be a sports guy. I never intended to be a sports guy. The whole reason I do a March Madness bracket is to try and poke fun at those guys because sometimes I do better than them when I don't even follow it. So, to me, that brings me pure joy and entertainment. Because while they try and look at it and they're following it and they know which teams are going to be best and they know which teams are going to be great, I just come out and I just say, hey, you know what? I think this game's going to win because they're really cool. And now I'm busted. I think they're busted as well. We do have our KQAM KGSO brackets that we're still grading as we go along here, and we're going to continue to grade those over the next few days, but many of them being busted because of just how crazy this March Madness has actually been this year. Lots to get to today. I want to start right off the bat. Coming up in about 20 minutes, we're going to play our interview that we had yesterday with the regional liaison for the NRA, talking about some of the March for Our Lives, talking about some of the latest legislation in Kansas and Colorado and Nebraska and the whole region around us on advancing the Second Amendment, and even during the national debate, how we defend the national movement with protecting the Second Amendment. I know it's a wild concept. I know it's crazy. The fact that we have school shootings that are going on and that we actually blame the person, not actually the inanimate object. It's a wild concept, I know. So we'll play that interview coming up at the bottom of the hour. We also have a lot of great guests today. State Representative Brenda Landwehr. She'll be joining us today in the 8 o'clock hour. But I want to start off with this. And this came to my attention this morning as I was kind of going through some of the news and hearing some of the latest discussions. And hat tip to Cake TV on this story as at the national level. Now, this is kind of a big turnaround for the Republican Party. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm actually in support of this bill. But I'm a little surprised that it's actually happening. Proposed federal bill could mean good news for Kansas farmers is the headline for Cake TV. U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell, Senate Majority Leader, announced he wants to legalize industrial hemp nationwide. His proposed bill passes, it would open up the door for Kansas farmers. Now, we've discussed it at the statewide level, but to legalize it on the national level is a really dramatic change from kind of the national mentality that we've had when it comes to hemp, agricultural hemp, and when it comes to marijuana. Now, as you know, I'm in no way, shape, or form a fan of the legalized marijuana recreationally, medicinally. I'm really not a fan of it. I have been a fan of the agricultural hemp because there's no THC and it's a totally different product. The thing is that most individuals kind of lump the two together. They don't know that there's a big difference between the two. And that's the biggest struggle that statewide here in the state of Kansas that we've been having with the whole legalization of with agricultural hemp was because that the legislators, many of them, and just the common mentality, the common thought process from a lot of the voters and constituents and just the average public, they don't necessarily know the difference between hemp and marijuana. And as we talk about this on a national level, I wonder where this is coming from. I mean, it's good news. It's very good news. The question is, how many states would go out of their way to actually ban it statewide after it's been legalized nationally? Now, that can happen. Just like right now where we have a lot of the states trying to fight to legalize agricultural hemp while we still have it banned nationwide. What if it starts going the opposite direction? And many Republican states, I think, would try and do that. They would say, you know what, we're not really a big fan. We think it's going to be the gateway opening the door for the movement for medicinal or recreational marijuana, and we don't want to be associated with either product one way or another. So I find it quite intriguing that the national level we're talking about legalizing agricultural hemp. So I want to get your thoughts on that. I know it's been a discussion that we've had on the show quite a bit here and there, but as we talk about legalizing it federally, which they're talking about including it into the Farm Bill of 2018. And if they include it into the Farm Bill, for one, it's going to be more difficult to actually remove it from the Farm Bill because of the fact that, hey, you know what, we're going to include it on. It's kind of like an omnibus bill, but just for agriculture. Well, it's supposed to be just for agriculture. Then we talk about the food stamps that's included into it and the WIC program that's included into it and all these other social programs that have nothing to do with the Department of Agriculture, that have nothing to do with farmers, but we include that in there. And remember, farming itself is only close to like 5 or 6% of the actual farm bill. The rest of it is actual food stamp programs and social programs that are completely absurd. So, I mean, we can address that, but if we throw in agricultural hemp into the mix as well, I'm almost concerned that this is some kind of political play to try and shut down the agricultural farm bill of 2018. I don't know if it would. It may not. We may actually be able to see it go through and we may see something positive happen from it, but I'm very concerned about that because there is that stigma that's still included in with hemp and marijuana. And I don't want it to be that gateway to marijuana just because of the fact that I'm not a fan of it. I've seen what it's done in the state of Colorado, and I just don't approve of it. I just don't care for it at all, in any way, shape, or form. I think that it would be beneficial, and I don't want to go down that road necessarily today. I think it would be beneficial for us to hold off and do a few more studies and kind of wait and ride it out for a long term to see what the effects are in some of the other states that have done it. But when we come to agricultural hemp, as we talk about the economy in the state of Kansas, as we talk about the economy really in the whole mid-America region, with Nebraska, with Oklahoma, with Texas, with Iowa, with Wisconsin, with the Dakotas, with some of these areas where we have major agriculture as a huge part of our state GDP, would this be able to get us back on track a little bit? Now, I have a story that we will read a little bit later as well that talked about some research study from one of the professors at one of the universities that's trying to say that the Brownback tax cuts, Governor Sam Brownback's tax cuts from 2012, they were a lot of the problem of what happened with the economy as opposed to the national downslope when it came to agriculture. So we'll talk about that a bit later, but we all of us have to admit that agriculture is suffering right now. When the average income for a farmer went from $150,000 as a profit at the end of the year, and now we're dropped down to close to $4,000 or $5,000 at the end of the year for a profit for a farmer. First off, what's the point of even farming anymore? Because you're not going to get a profit. You're going to be struggling. You're going to barely make ends meet just to put the plant in the ground to be able to feed the world. It's a troubling situation to be in. So we need something to boost it and to bring in a new revenue. Just as we try and bring in different industries into a state, as we talk about agriculture, then we trying to bring in manufacturing, then we trying to bring in maybe engineering, we trying to bring in some of the tech industry, and we try and pluralize our economy to where if one does have a downslope, that doesn't affect the entire state. We need to do that on a micro level as well when it comes to agriculture, and not just cattle, not just corn, not just wheat or soybeans, but then maybe we start looking at, hey, agricultural hemp might be an opportunity to do that. They've shown the studies from what I've seen where it actually includes some of the resources back into the soil that it actually needs to. It takes a break when it comes to actually wanting to grow some of the other crops, and it could be an entirely new industry. I don't know. I'm a fan of it. I know a lot of us are fans of it. I just find it quite interesting that we're starting to talk about it nationally now, trying to include it into a farm bill. And the big question is that I'm very intrigued by is whether some of the states may consider it as still some of the stigma when it comes to marijuana, and they begin to ban it and openly ban it at the state level, even though that it may be legalized federally. Your thoughts on that? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. I don't want to touch too terribly much on that today, but it is kind of an interesting piece of news. When we come back, I want to shift gears a little bit to the election. When it comes to the governor's race, Governor Jeff Collier is making his stand, and he is really setting his own ideas and moving them forward when it comes to the state of Kansas. He is creating his own record that I think is going to benefit him when it comes to the election. The latest opinion piece that I've seen is attacking Secretary of State Chris Kobach and saying that we should be a little more lenient with Governor Jeff Collier. I'm thinking that it is a move to try and soften our opinion of Governor Jeff Collier in order to make it a little more competitive between the Collier and Kobach race when it comes for the governorship. Could be wrong, but they're trying to let Governor Jeff Collier off on a few things as they're trying to hone on Chris Kobach, because I think they're a little scared of what may happen if really either one of them gets in, but wanting to especially demonize Chris Kobach. We'll talk about that and a heck of a lot more today. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
Listening to The Voice of Reason on the Mid-America Network.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, 24 minutes past the hour. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. It is a Tuesday. Great to have you along. It's a Patriotic Tuesday. That's what we do. Hashtag Patriotic Tuesday right here on the Voice of Reason. Like it, share it on Facebook. We appreciate you when you do. Leave a comment, say good morning, say you're there. Call me a jerk. I don't really care. One way or another, it's going to get out there. What do you do? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. I do have some good news as well. It's funny where we get really frustrated at the federal level and then they try and make it up to us. It's kind of like the girlfriend or the boyfriend that you've had and they're kind of there, but they're not really, and you're really upset with them and you want to break up, but then as soon as you start talking about breaking up, then all of a sudden they do something really sweet to kind of draw you back in because they're kind of like the succubus kind of idea, the mentality. And you've all had one of those, right? When you were young and you were dating and you were trying to be all nice and you really wanted to change everything about yourself in order to try and be with that person because they really meant a lot to you and you really liked them. And they just kind of toyed with you a little bit and they would stray off and they go do whatever they wanted to do. And then you'd be upset with them and then they come back and be all sweet. So that way you'd be sucked right back in. And it's the ever going cycle. That's exactly what would happen all the time, and you'd never get away from them, right? That's kind of like our politicians in Washington, D.C., is they're kind of the succubus. They want you to feel like you're part of the team. They want you to feel like that you're actually involved, that you actually have a voice, that they're actually representing you the best. And some of them do. Honestly, some of them truly, honestly do want you to have a voice and are actually there to represent you. I'm not saying that they're not. Some of them do. Some of them, however, just don't give a care in the world. They don't care. They just go there. They do their own thing. They turn in from their $100,000 yearly salary to turn into being worth like $15 million. And it's insane how they do that. I don't know. Welcome to your taxpayer dollars going to something beneficial, I guess. And one of the good things is we talked about first the agricultural hemp that's going into the farm bill. That I don't know if it's going to hurt it, harm it, or whether it's actually going to benefit from it. But as we talk about immigration, and we've talked about the individual, the professor, the scientist, the biologist that's from Lawrence, and he's actually been released. He's back to his family. Everything's hunky-dory now. I don't know what's going to happen to him thereafter. Maybe he's got to reapply for his visas. Maybe he's going to get a little slap on the wrist. I don't know. But now we're seeing many states actually legalize the idea and the opportunity for non-citizens to be voting. And as they are allowing illegal immigrants to actually vote, to have a say, because they really want that voice of someone who wants to be represented in the government world, yet they're not supposed to because they're not here legally, or maybe they have a visa and they're not a naturalized citizen. And the one stipulation that we have in our Constitution is that a United States citizen shall not be infringed to vote and actually have the right to vote. And now there's different amendments, different clauses throughout the Constitution when it talks about voting, and every time that it mentions it, it says that a citizen has the right to vote, not anybody else. So now we're going to be canceling out citizenship votes because of individuals who may be on a visa, maybe on a temporary work visa, student visa, whatever. They may be here on a green card, or they may just be here illegally. And many states, California and Maryland being two of them, that are actually pushing legislation to legalize the voting of illegal immigrants. So now we're going to see 2020 is coming up in 2 years. And as you know, the census is going to be out that year, and everybody's going to be taking the surveys and the polls and for the census, so that way the government can gauge where everybody's living and what kind of population we have. And we're going to be talking about these things because this is how we gauge our nation. And there's going to be a question on there now. The Commerce Department says that in 2020, the U.S. Census will include a question about citizenship status. Now, I don't know if it's going to help. Because let me ask you a question. If you're getting this in the mail and you get the census and say, okay, I just want to know your average income for the family household, how many people are living in the household, how many children you have, and, oh, by the way, what race you are, what gender you may be, because apparently we have to care about all that. And, oh, by the way, are you a U.S. citizen? If you're an illegal alien, do you really think that you're going to check on there? No, I'm not a U.S. citizen. I'm an illegal alien. Now, if you're here as a Visa card member, a Visa holder, if you're here with a green card, if you're here with a student visa, work visa, whatever, and you're here, then obviously you're going to put that on because, hey, you know what? No, I am a student visa, yada, yada, yada. And that way we can gauge that. And if you're legal and if you're legit, then you got nothing to hide and you're fine. But if you're an individual who's here when you're not supposed to be here and you get that letter in the mail, first off, number one, do you really think you're going to fill out the entire thing? Because you might not be able to read it. Second off, if you get it in the mail and you do still fill it out because maybe you're one of those activists, you feel really good about yourself because you went out for a day without an immigrant day and you went out there to protest and you're protesting for the DACA rights and you're protesting for X, Y, and Z. If you're out there and you want to become a citizen and you fill this out, do you really think that you're going to fill it out openly and say, here, government, I'm not a citizen. Come and get me, please? It's not going to happen. You're going to say, yes, I'm a citizen. And do you think they're going to do a follow-up? All they're going to do is read the card and just submit it into the system so that way they can have the little blip in the numbers. That's all they're going to do. Do you really think that they're actually going to come and do a follow-up and say, hey, you marked you are a citizen here. We don't have any documentation on you because we ran you through every database that we have, and now we don't know what's going on because we have some discrepancies. Please fill us in on what you're saying. I don't think that's going to happen. This might actually deter a lot of individuals from actually participating, so it's easier for us to find out who they are and what they're doing in our society. Interesting concepts, but at least they're trying. A for effort, I guess, when it comes to the government wanting to actually figure out what's happening within its borders. This is the Voice of Reason. Stay here.
We learn to control.
Andy never shies away from a fight.
Just you try it.
Oh, I'll try it.
Just you try it.
You'll feel it when I try it.
I'd like to see you have at it.
Would you now?
And now's your chance to jump in the ring.
Are you insane?
Give Andy a call at 316-721-8255. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, broadcasting across the entire Mid-America network. We appreciate you hanging out with us today, no matter where you may be in the 5-state area. We love having you aboard. 316-721-8255, 36 minutes past the hour. You know, we don't have enough debate on this show. We really don't. And I know that progressives, they're scared. They usually don't listen to hate talk radio. They don't like it, but I love the dialogue. I love debating, and I miss it. We get it every once in a while on the show. I just got to find the right topic, push the right button, get them all fired up to where they have to call in and set the record straight. It's cool. I love it. 316-721-8255. Can you believe that April is right around the corner? April 1st on Sunday, Easter Sunday. April Fool's Day. I don't know if you do any April Fool's pranks. I do on occasion, but I'm not very good at pulling pranks. I'm not very good at hiding things or keeping things secret and then trying to pull off a prank. I'm not very good at it. But April's right around the corner. Easter Sunday, going to be having the rabbit for dinner. Okay, it is our duty as parents to traumatize our children in that sense. During Christmas, you have to have reindeer for your big special dinner. For Thanksgiving, you have to have the turkey. And then for Easter, you have to have the rabbits. And that way, you traumatize the children when it comes to, St. Patty's Day, you have, well, I was going to say the leprechaun, but I don't know if that actually works. But you have the certain holidays, you have the certain meals, and that way you can show them that they're quite delicious and that we can celebrate the holiday all the better. Do you do that? Does anybody else do that? My parents tried to for a little bit. They were bad at kind of making the jokes too, but they would joke once in a while trying to give us a little spoof like that. 316-721-8255. Let's take a phone call here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name? Scott, what's going on, sir?
Well, there's two important points that need to be made. One is if you have a census, you should be checking who's a citizen anyway. You shouldn't have to ask people. It should automatically be checked. Yeah,
you would think that'd be an automatic question on the census anyways. I don't know why it's not already, but do you think that's going to deter individuals from actually wanting to fill it out?
Well, like I say, they shouldn't even have the question on there. They should be doing a background check to see if a person's a citizen anyway, even without them having a mark on there.
Sure.
And then the other thing I was going to make a point about is that when you see they have this protest here, these kids and everything,
sure.
Well, you have to understand that if the New World Order is able to do that, then they're also able to make plans to assassinate the president. So they're just showing you what kind of atmosphere they can create to where they can go ahead and try to make an assassination attempt on the president.
Well, that's an interesting concept, and I appreciate the call, Scott. I want to move on. We got an interview I want to play. It's an interesting concept too. You're right that there's money, there's movement, there's organization behind these March for Our Lives ridiculous marches and protests. Who's actually backing it? I'm sure that you can trace the money and track the money to some degree, and it probably goes back to someone like a George Soros or some type of big money that actually wants to promote the anti-Second Amendment. Some kind of Michael Bloomberg or some organization that is anti-gun, because it's very easy to use the children as an emotional ploy to say, hey, I want to use the children so that way we feel all emotional, we feel really bad about it, and then we can actually start advocating for some type of legislation to regulate guns. So you're right that there is some kind of movement and there's something behind the scenes to actually organize something like that. It's very, very difficult to get an organization to say, to rally people and say, show up and let's make a stand. Go onto Facebook right now, create an event, and say, I want 2,000 people to show up to my event just based on Facebook invites. It's not going to happen. You're going to get maybe 10 people there, and it's probably going to be your parents and your grandparents saying, oh, it's so cute that you organize something. And that's usually how this ends up working. So you're right that there's some type of activism or some type of movement behind it. The question is who is that? Now, as for assassinating the president, I'm not going to go that far and say that they're going to assassinate the president. I will say that they have an agenda against the president, and they're going to block him any way that they can. And hopefully we're not to the point to where we have so many radicals that have money and political ploy and political money that they can actually organize some type of physical attack on the president, and right now they're still trying to fight it politically. I want to play an interview. Yesterday we sat down with our regional NRA liaison, Travis Couture-Lovelady, former state representative for the state of Kansas, and was talking about some of the legislation happening throughout the different states, and this is what he had to say yesterday right here on the Voice of Reason. NRA liaison, he's also a former state representative for the state of Kansas. It is Mr. Travis Couture-Lovelady back on the line with us. Travis, how are you, my friend?
Doing well, Andy.
Hey.
How are you today?
Hey, we're having more fun than we should be. Let's talk about the state of Kansas, though, at first. The state last week or 2 weeks ago, they went on with about 5 different resolutions wanting to raise the age of purchasing a firearm to the age of 21, wanting to have the 3-day rescission or the 3-day period, waiting period, if you try and purchase a firearm, trying to repeal the carry on campus, trying to repeal this, repeal that. The question is, the good news is it didn't work. Is it going to be tried again?
Yeah, well, the good news is it didn't work. The scary thing is that it was fairly close, even in Kansas. Some of these votes, the amendment by Senator Lynn Rogers, which would have banned not only bump stocks but any trigger modifications. So when you could possibly go ahead and take that thing and liberally interpret it, and any sort of modification to any gun could have been used on a lot of those things, especially the bigger Dianne Feinstein version at the federal level. And see, that one was a 20-20 tie. So it's those kind of proposals were close. The 3-day waiting period only lost by 6 votes. 21-year-olds was 27-13. Repeal of campus carry was 19-21.
Wow.
So the repeal of constitutional carry 16-24. So these things weren't blowout only Democrats voting for them. There were a lot of Republicans voting for these insane gun control amendments too. So it was good. It was great to see in tough times the senators that did stand up for our constitutional rights, and they should be commended. But man, it's important that we stay active and stay after them.
Why do you think that it was so close with these votes? Was it because just the scare of what's happening nationally with the environment and with the discussion happening nationally, or are we starting to expose maybe some of the moderate Republicans who had an agenda like this, but they didn't want to really go on record with it? Because especially during election year, I would think that they would try and shy away from some of these gun votes because they don't want a bad rating from the NRA. Going into an election year, unless they don't care about the NRA any longer and they don't care about the massive amount of individuals in the state of Kansas that actually have guns and are pro Second Amendment. Why do you think it was so close?
Well, yeah, a little bit of both. There's obviously an emotional reaction right now. There's people not thinking logically; they're thinking with emotion, and the media is driving that pretty hard. So you have some of that going on inside the Capitol, and you know how those things go on any number of issues when you take out logic and only insert emotion. But yeah, your point is also well taken, that a lot of these folks were not fully vetted on a lot of these issues. In the last election, there was a wave election, and they were able to skirt through on other issues and not be fully vetted on gun issues and some of these other conservative principles. And yeah, they're voting what they believe. So yeah, they are absolutely being exposed for their true beliefs on gun rights.
You kind of being the regional liaison for the NRA, and do you work with many other states as well, not just the state of Kansas, but working with different state legislature on different legislation they're trying to promote? What's the feel from the other states? Are they kind of in the same boat as we are, to where they're very iffy and very scared and wary about the Second Amendment right now? Are they actually advancing and doing something positive in that sense, or are you seeing some of the other states go in the wrong direction?
Yeah, a lot of the coastal states are really going hard left right now, pushing all of these things. These aren't new ideas. These are things that they've pushed in every state, and it's kind of the Bloomberg model is to take these sort of issues and slam them through. And we're lucky to live in Kansas where we're able to stop it, but a lot of these states on the coast are not able to do so. In our region, though, Oklahoma they're doing pretty well. They're pushing forward on a lot of good bills. You remember in Colorado how that goes out there.
Sure.
They're pretty split governments, and neither side is making much headway there. But in Wyoming, we did pass a good stand your ground law. They had a duty to retreat in Wyoming, which was just hard to fathom that, and we were able to extend the Castle Doctrine out to public. So a good, strong stand your ground law with civil immunity. So you can defend yourself, and that was pretty exciting. And those folks, man, they stood strong. They only have a 1-month session essentially, and so they don't have a lot of time to sit around and wait. They had to keep on working hard and pushing forward, and they did so even in tough times with the media bearing down on them.
Sure.
So there's a lot of people out there who have been really strong on our rights and pushing forward, and a lot of our people are asking questions and digging deeper. What can we do? This is scary. They're exposing the leftist anti-gun agenda, and really, it's time to get involved, and they're absolutely right.
Well, that's very true. I mean, it's time for us to stand up and actually make something happen. I know that we usually like to be the calm, laid back, don't get involved in sort of things, just kind of keep a tabs on it. But right now, we really need to make our voice heard, especially in our state legislature, because some of these votes may be back soon. I know that before we had a decent bill that started in the state legislature when it came to state reciprocity, but then they tagged on a whole bunch of crap too, and it wasn't worth it, including the try to repeal and carry on campus. What kind of legislation do you see coming back up in the state of Kansas before the end of the session? Is it going to be some of the negative stuff with trying to repeal carry on campus again, or might we see some positive things, maybe like a state reciprocity bill?
Well, yeah, that bill is actually in conference committee today. So the Senate was able to strip out the ban on constitutional carry on college campuses, which was good. So we just have to hold them to it in conference committee. And then that bill, as it passed the House, it also had a good thing in there. It lowered the permit age to 18 for concealed carry permits to encourage young folks to go out and get those permits and be able to carry on campuses. And that was pretty exciting. But then, of course, after Parkland, that kind of hit a wall, and things have been pretty quiet on that front. But that's still sitting there. It's still a possibility.
There it is, Travis Couture Lovelady, Regional Director for the NRA, former state representative for the state of Kansas. Some good news coming out for the Second Amendment in the state, possibly some bad news as well. We'll keep you on tabs on what's happening there. Lots more coming up. Stay tuned. About 6 minutes to the top of the hour. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Wrapping up hour number one. Can you believe it? It goes by way too fast. We have way too much fun on the show, and I want to hear from you. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK, if I can talk myself. Speaking of having too much fun, I'll be filling in for Armed American Radio Wednesday and Thursday this week. Get ready for that. That'll be a blast. Mark Walters having a couple days off there, so stay tuned. We'll be rocking it. We have the plume of smoke in studio, which means it's probably time for Rick with the news.
It's not smoke.
Oh, that's right.
It's vape.
It's the cloud of vape. It's the smokes.
It's carcinogen free.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Good morning, Andy. Good morning, everyone. The latest government snapshot shows that nearly half of the Kansas winter wheat crop is in poor to very poor condition, that despite some recent rainfall. The National Ag Statistics Service reported yesterday that 49% of the wheat in Kansas was in poor to very poor condition, about 38% rated as fair with 12% good, and only 1% statewide rated as excellent. U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell announced he wants to legalize industrialized hemp nationwide. If his proposed bill passes, it would open up the doors for Kansas farmers. Cake TV reports more than 30 states already grow the cash crop. Monday, U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell announced he would soon introduce a bipartisan bill allowing farmers to grow the controversial crop. Industrialized hemp is not marijuana. It only contains around 1/10 of the amount of THC substance found in the marijuana plant, but Kansas law enforcement fear legalizing it would complicate criminal cases. Still, some Kansas farmers say the new crop would bring millions of dollars to the struggling ag industry. Industrial hemp is used to make things like paper, rope, insulation, and other items. And a Kansas nonprofit has raised $7,000 through its first ever adult Easter egg hunt. Karen Baker is the director of finance at Good Samaritan Society in Hutchinson. She tells the Hutch News that 200 adults participated in the event Saturday at the Cary Park Shelter in Hutch. 3,000 eggs were hidden, loaded with candy, raffle tickets, and other markers for prizes. All of the 200 prizes, including Kansas City Royals tickets and restaurant gift certificates, were donated, and the money raised, that's $7,000, will go toward a wheelchair-accessible swing at the organization's assisted living home. I'd say that was successful.
That's successful. Let me ask you something. As a parent, did you ever traumatize your children around Christmas, Easter time, and say on Easter that you're having rabbit? Christmas time that you were having reindeer? You ever do that?
That is horrible, Andy.
It is not horrible. It is the parental duties to try and traumatize your children. Hey, we caught the Easter bunny. Guess what we're having for dinner? Really? You've never done that?
Oh, my word,
You've
Andy.
never done that. Really? Am I the only one that's done this? Come on.
And we wonder why our youth is troubled.
Why the youth is troubled, yeah. I'm glad you brought up the agricultural hemp bill. I talked about that in the first segment this hour, and I like that idea. It's kind of a change, though, with the whole mentality with like Jeff Sessions wanting to come down on the marijuana thing. And then I know there's the stigma that a lot of people think that marijuana and hemp are kind of the same thing or kind of the same blend. And for us to want to legalize the agricultural hemp while come down on the marijuana thing, I find that kind of interesting at the federal level.
I don't know. I don't write the news. I just report it.
You just report it there. Well, there it is, Rick, at the news.
And
Talk about the
news.
nice little vape that's happening right there. The new poof of smoke is happening here in the KQAM studios. 316-721-8255.
Now, on an Easter-related note, though,
yes.
Not traumatizing or anything
You've
like this.
You've never done that.
No way. You don't do that.
Oh, come on.
Well, maybe you do.
Maybe.
Anyway,
and then like leprechauns on St. Patty's Day.
Are you ready? Are you ready for a big Easter event with Isla?
Oh, it'll be a great time. It'll be a great time. We'll hide the eggs and we'll, go around and have fun, and we'll probably color the eggs at some point. And we'll
Does
have
she
the big
like
dinner.
Peeps?
I don't know.
Does
I don't know if she's had a
anybody
poop.
like Peeps?
I don't.
Why
My
do they
wife
make
loves
Peeps?
Peeps. My wife loves Peeps. She does.
She likes the sugar rush,
probably.
probably.
I don't know. I do not like Peeps. I do not know anybody else that likes Peeps other than my wife, but she loves them.
Every time I've ever received Peeps, I'm throwing them out long about, the end of May because they've turned into Craig Mead over there, of course, supporting the sugar industry.
But I'm not a candy person anyways. We have a whole box of candy that I still have from Halloween because I just don't eat candy.
Well, bring it in here. You know it'll go away.
Yeah, it'll go away pretty quickly. Hour number 2 coming up here on The Voice Reason. Don't go anywhere. This is your show. As usual, time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is The Voice Reason. Stay tuned for hour number 2.
It's time for Reason.
But if they disagree with you, then you're not actually promoting freedom of speech. You're actually promoting hate speech. Because in today's times, anything that offends you, that makes you feel uncomfortable, is no longer a freedom of speech, but is now hate speech. If you say, I love Donald Trump, that is now considered fascist hate speech because you're probably a white supremacist and you don't have any place in society.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of South Central Kansas, right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM simulcasting on KGPT TV, channel 2610. Welcome aboard. Good morning to you. Great to have you along today on a Tuesday. It is hashtag Patriotic Tuesday, as it is every single week, trying to show the world that we are still a nationalist type of country, that we are proud of our nation, that we're proud of waving our flag, and that no one is going to take away our flag, our Bible, our guns in any way, shape, or form. They say that we cling onto our guns and our Bible. Well, just wrap ourselves in an American flag and we all complete the package, don't we? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We have the Facebook Live feed that's back up and rolling today after our internet issue yesterday. You can check that out, like it, share it, leave a comment. Call me a jerk, say good morning. I don't really care what you want to do, but just leave a comment. We appreciate that very much. Like it and share it onto your own page. Let's spread the word. I know the Facebook algorithms try and shut down conservative messages on social media. Let's not let that happen. Let's spread it everywhere that we actually can. 9 minutes past the hour. Coming up in about a half hour, we're going to have our city council update from the Wichita City Council. Bryan Frye going to be joining us as he does every single Tuesday. Plus, in the 8 o'clock hour, State Representative Brenda Landwehr. She'll be joining us talking about the latest when it comes to the educational debate, some of the tax debates happening up there, and the latest that she's seen in Topeka. We are wrapped up, by the way. We have a few weeks left of the state legislature in the session for this year. What's going to come out of it now that we have this report? What are we going to do? I have not heard a single legislator yet say that they are optimistic about not raising taxes this year. So we'll get her perspective on that in just about an hour from now. I want to start off with a story that is interesting and yet ironic and funny and sad and stupid all at the same time. And it's not really going to be the focal point of the topic, but it's kind of the introduction to the topic. And I want to read it because it kind of sets the stage for the absurdity that's happening in the world right now when it comes to protected classes and everybody that needs to feel like a victim, and the fact that people are just terrible, horrible people because we actually live in a capitalist society. So this is going to start off a fun segment for you when it comes to the protected classes. This is our segment of the day.
It's your Pinko Flaming Commie Corner.
And that's really, unfortunately, happens quite a bit in the United States today. As there is a professor from Michigan State University, Sharina Gandhi, a religious studies professor at Michigan State, who claimed in an article that she recently authored that Americans who practice yoga are contributing to white supremacy and promoting the yoga industrial complex. I'm not joking on this. This is a real thing. White Americans should learn the history of yoga, acknowledge the cultural appropriation that engages, and possibly reduce the cost of yoga classes for poor people, a group that often includes people of color and recent migrants such as Indian women, whom this practice rightfully belongs, according to Professor Sharina Gandhi. We need to lower the price of yoga classes. We need to understand the history of yoga because poor people are all minority people, and they can't get into the yoga class, and therefore we're culturally appropriating them, and we're promoting our white supremacy. Now, if that's not racism by itself, saying that all poor people are minorities and that minorities can't get into the white classes of yoga, then I don't know what else racism actually is. Quote, we would argue one of the goals of white supremacy is to buffer white people from the pain that comes from the process of exchanging cultural grounding from the unearthed the power and privilege of whiteness. This modern-day trend of cultural appropriation of yoga, I'm not joking, this is a real thing. This modern-day trend of cultural appropriation of yoga is a continuation of white supremacy and colonialism, maintaining the pattern of white people consuming the stuff of culture that is convenient and portable while ignoring the well-being and liberation of Indian people. Given a deeper analysis of yoga, white yoga practitioners and teachers can engage in yoga in a decolonializing way that reduces harm and seek greater cultural accountability. All right, so there's the story. That's how I wanted to introduce this one, because now we're white supremacists for wanting to. Now, I don't do yoga. I've done yoga once in my life, and I said this is ridiculous, and I'll never do it again. But there are a lot of people that enjoy yoga, and I'm not going to judge on that because, a lot of people like it. It's relaxing. It makes you flexible. It makes you feel better about yourself. It puts you in a meditative state. It's a very good thing for you. It's very healthy. I got no problem with it. But people who apparently do yoga are white supremacists, and unless we understand the history of it from it coming from traditionally India and Indian women who suffer, and of course they're now the victims, and because we don't allow them into the class because they are poor and only rich white people can actually get into the classes, we're culturally appropriating them and showing our colonialism and our white supremacy in the United States. Now we need to have a protected class of yoga practicing Indian women because we are abusing them and they can claim racism in society because they're not able to purchase a ticket to go into practice yoga. This is where we've come to in society, and the reason I bring this up is because there was an article and opinion piece when it comes to Governor Jeff Collier and Chris Kobach in the state of Kansas and the LGBTQ community. And because everybody needs to be in a protected class today, rather than saying hands off government and everybody just do your own thing, now we need to have special interests of protected classes for every small, minute group, including now apparently yoga women. Here's what the story had to say. The headline of a recent editorial in The Star asked a fair question. Why won't Governor Jeff Collier commit to protecting LGBT workers from discrimination? Now, if you remember back then, Governor Sam Brownback had repealed laws in the state of Kansas that were specific protections against LGBTQ community members in government agencies. And they said that he was attacking members of the LGBTQ community, that he didn't care about them, that he hated them. And that's not the case in any way, shape, or form, because we don't need protected classes like that. We're going to keep you on your work job based on your merit, based on your qualifications, based on how well you actually perform your duties. And if you know anything about government agencies, that if you become a government employee, it's extremely difficult for you to lose that job, is it not? You're tenured in. I mean, come on, work for the Department of Transportation and tell me how, trust me, I mean, I know this. I worked for CDOT, the Colorado Department of Transportation, for a while when actually going to broadcasting school, and it's very difficult to get individuals out of there, especially in the engineering departments. You literally have to make their lives so miserable that they want to leave on their own because they won't leave. You can't really get rid of individuals at a government agency. It's very, very difficult to do so at the state levels and at the federal level. So tell me how there's some type of discrimination going on because you're a member of the LGBTQ community. If you have the merit, if you have the qualifications for the job, if you show up on time and you do your work, if you're not gloating about your lifestyle all over the place to making people uncomfortable the same way as anybody else would. It's uncomfortable if you talk about your lifestyle, whether it's in the norm or outside of the norm, in the workplace, because that's not your place to talk about that in the workplace, unless you're just doing it with a close buddy or something. But Governor Brownback repealed these laws in the state of Kansas on specific protections for LGBTQ communities, for both the public sector and the private sector, concerned that we just didn't need protected classes. Now, the community obviously wants those reinstated and Governor Jeff Collier to re-implement them. And he has not done so yet. But the opinion piece says the answer seems very clear on why Governor Jeff Collier won't commit to protecting the LGBT, because apparently unless there's actually very specific laws on the books, then they're not protected and then they're vulnerable and they're the victims and we get to go down that road. The answer seems very clear, according to the article, and may not be popular with some. If the governor made such a commitment today, the issue to issue an executive order to protect LGBTQ communities and state workers from discrimination, he might as well withdraw from the Republican primary race for Kansas governor. Because with a promise like that, he would virtually be handing over the nomination to Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach, whose overall appeal to conservatives made him the front runner. Kobach states unequivocally that he will do nothing to protect the rights of LGBT community members. Nope, let's try that again. Try it again. Stop. There we go. Let's do this. Uh-oh. Oh, there we are. He will do nothing to protect the rights of these workers and said it's up to the legislature to pass laws if needed. Kobach's answer is wildly popular with the Republican right, but also with those not so far right. The headline of this article is Kansas voters should give Governor Collier a pass on LGBT issues for now. They are desperate to not have Secretary of State Chris Kobach become the Republican nominee and to become governor of the state of Kansas. So they're urging the progressives who are activists in this and say that we need special protections or else they're going to be discriminated against in society and everybody's going to hate them and we're just a bunch of racist bigots, that we need to give the pass to Governor Jeff Collier because he won't stand and write these protected class executive orders, and give him a pass because they can push for that since we know that he's maybe a little bit softer on these issues. Maybe he's not the firebrand conservative like Kobach is, and that maybe he's going to be a little bit easier to work with if he becomes governor and he gets voted in November. And therefore, we should give him a leniency on this now so that way we can support him. And that way, when he gets in there, hopefully, then we can actually urge him to do so when he gets in office permanently in November. So it's a fascinating article. It's fun to watch them squirm, desperate not to have certain individuals get the nomination or to become governor. Here's the question that I have is that what type of protected classes do we actually need in society? What kind of protected classes do we need? Now, obviously, we had to pass certain laws to allow minority groups to be able to vote, women to be able to vote, to be able to say that, if you're disabled, we need disability laws so that way you can actually get to the job if you're in a wheelchair. Those sorts of that. We need those sorts of things. But a lifestyle, does that need to be as a quote-unquote protected class? Now, I've never heard, it may happen somewhere in the world, it may happen somewhere in the United States, I don't know. I've never heard of a case, though, to where someone was fired or was mistreated in the workplace because of their lifestyles of being part of the LGBTQ community. I've never heard of it. Because most employers who are here to create a profit, to be able to create a product for their business, most of them who actually own a business or a manager who runs a business, doesn't care what your lifestyle is. As long as it doesn't affect your work job, nobody cares. And there's a big difference between wanting your identity to be something so specific of I'm part of this community and therefore you should respond to me as such, and you should actually know that, and everybody should know about it because I'm going to put it out there for the entire world to know, and you should congratulate me and you should call me courageous for being part of that, or say, I don't care. I don't want people to know about my personal life. It doesn't make any difference to me when I'm here at work doing my thing to be able to create a paycheck and to be able to create a product for the company. There's a big difference there. And if you are showboating around your lifestyle, regardless of whether you're part of the LGBT community or whether you're a guy talking about how many girls you scored over the weekend, regardless of that, that shouldn't be a conversation happening in the workplace in any way, shape, or form. Because that's not productive in the workforce, is it? So why do we need a protected class specifically mentioned in the government for this community? Why do we need to go from here's society, go do your thing, to no, we need to have a protected class for every single individual, except for, of course, the white heterosexual male, because then you're just a racist, xenophobic bigot who promotes your white supremacy. I'm curious as to why we need certain protected classes for every little group just because we feel victimized and we feel vulnerable because the government's not there to specifically protect you and your group. I want to open it up to you. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
My name is Eddie.
Good morning, Eddie. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. I don't believe in protected classes, okay? Because if you really want to look at it, each and every person on this planet is different. Mm-hmm. So what are we going to have? 1 million different protected classes?
That's what they want.
Seriously.
That's literally what they want. They want... I mean, we're going to go from the LGBTQ community to, of course, the race group, so the blacks or the Asians or the Hispanics, and then we can break it down and say that if you're a woman, if you're a black transgender woman over the age of 30, then you're going to have your own protected class, so that way you can pile it on. So if there's any type of lawsuit, then you can tag on the woman part, the black part, the transgender part, the over the age of 30 part, and therefore you can get all of these, and then it's going to be a specific protected class for each and every one of these groups. That's literally what they want.
Well, I was actually asked to leave a store one day because of what happened to, okay, this is not even a joke, okay. I was in this store, and this clerk came up behind me and said, "Can I help you?" And I said, and being a polite person, I said, "No, ma'am." And I turned around, and it was a guy wearing a dress, and I laughed. This is not even a joke, okay? And I laughed. Oh, Lord, and it just went downhill from there.
Awkward. What was the response?
Oh, can't you see that I'm a woman? And Andy, this guy was the ugliest looking. I don't know what the hell he was, but anyway, it was. I laughed. I mean, I just couldn't help myself.
I'm just laughing at the situation here. No, I'm not laughing at the individual. I'm laughing at the situation because I've never been put in a position like that, so I don't know the awkwardness of what entails with this kind of situation.
Andy, I laughed. I just looked at him and laughed. Seriously though, Andy, when was the last time that you ever went into a place of business or a government office and actually could tell that there was a transsexual, LBTZD person or whatever the hell they call themselves? When was the last time you actually went in there and you could tell that?
And just spot him right. No, I don't. And that's, well, I don't know. I mean, I guess we have a small company here, and I'm not necessarily around a whole lot of individuals like that. But I don't know, unless it's very blatant and they make it very obvious, if you necessarily recognize that. And if you do, is it because they're trying to showboat it, or is it just because it was a really bad cover-up job? I mean, I don't know.
It's listen, I am me, and I'm going to be me. And
Right.
if you wear a dress and if you're ugly, I'm going to laugh at you. And if you don't like it, that's tough.
Well, that's a great point. Eddie, I appreciate it, my friend. We got to take a break. I mean, it's an interesting story. It's a great story because you're right. When it comes down to it, we're an individual. Everybody's an individual, and everybody's unique and different, and that's why to have a protected class for everybody is completely absurd. And we're never going to be able to have a protected class for every single individual, because then there will be those that will come out of the works and find new ways to become a victim and new ways that are not protected, and it's going to be a never-ending cycle. If you want to dress up however you want to, that's fine. We also have to recognize, though, that there are social norms in society of what's accepted and what's not accepted, and you can't do something completely different from society and then not expect some type of response that's not completely normal. We have to admit that, right? We have to accept that. 316-721-8255, 24 minutes past the hour. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Back into the Voice of Reason, 29 minutes past the hour. When we come back after the bottom of the hour, went a little long in that last segment, that's all right. Appreciate the phone calls. When we come back, Bryan Frye, City Council member, going to be joining us. Our city update for the city of Wichita with the meeting that happened last week. The last couple of meetings have been really interesting in the city and what's going to come up today with the city council meeting for that one. So stay tuned in for that. Be part of it. Be active. Be engaged, and let your voice be heard right here for the city of Wichita. I want to continue this conversation a little bit later in the show as well when it comes to the protected classes, because now there are, as Eddie had mentioned and as we had mentioned, that there are protected classes for everybody, and it's going to continue to grow. If we don't stop this and nip it in the butt now, it's going to continue to grow. Everybody's going to need a protected class. We're going to feel victimized, and we will always find a way to be a victim in society, which is not what society is about. The American dream is not about playing the victimhood and figuring out who made us feel uncomfortable in society. It's about getting out and just doing your thing and making you and your family successful. We'll continue that conversation when we come back in a little bit. Bottom of the hour news. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
It's time for some common sense, sanity, and reason.
You can't handle the truth.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into it. It is a Tuesday, #Patriotic Tuesday. Great to have you along today on the week before Easter. Can you believe it? It's crazy how time flies this year. Already one of the fastest moving years that we've seen yet. Welcome back in. Better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink right here on the Voice of Reason. 36 minutes past the hour. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. It is time for our city update with City Council member Bryan Frye. And I tell you what, the city has been extremely busy with a lot of the meetings the last couple of weeks, with your trip to Washington, D.C. that we recapped last week. But Bryan, good morning. Welcome back.
Good morning, Andy. It's great to be here.
Hey, great to have you back. And last week, I know, now let's go back a few weeks, actually. About, 3 weeks ago, we had the big meeting with the fireworks, and we kind of touched on that last week. Then you guys were in D.C. for a couple of days. Last week, you came back kind of with another heavy plate of issues. How'd that one go?
You know, it was a great week. We had another great success story with another Wichita company expanding.
I love it.
Which is fantastic. We renewed our economic development contract with Greater Wichita Partnership, and they really act as that economic development arm for the city as well as the county and the region.
Very good.
So it was a strong week. This week we have what we call a consent meeting, which is a lot of things that are just typical business things that really don't need debate. You know, it's like approval of a road closure for a parade or a community event application.
Sure.
A petition for a paving improvement. These are just kind of those standard things that you have to get approved at a business meeting.
Sure.
But they don't require a lot of debate. So they're typically what we call a consent agenda item.
I'm sure someone could find a debate on those, though, right?
Of course.
There's always that one person. Yeah.
There's always, yep, absolutely. In fact, there's always that opportunity. If there's a question about something, we can pull it off and talk about it separately. But one of the cool things today in our consent agenda is the approval for the moving company that's going to handle the library move. So you got to think about all those thousands of books and materials that are at the downtown library.
Sure.
Those have to be moved to the new facility. We just don't go hire, a couple of guys in a van to do this, right?
Sure.
You've got to get a professional moving company. And we hired this company. That's what they do is they move library materials.
Wow.
And so they're actually going to clean them as well as they move them and catalog them and make sure that there's enough space on the shelf for every book that we have, plus all the books that are currently checked out. So they have to make sure they have room for it. What's surprising about this contract is the bid came in $158,000 less than budgeted. So that's money that we're going to be able to put back into the library, into the facility. And so that was a nice surprise. Again, it's an agenda item. That's a consent agenda. It doesn't sound real cool. But when you think about it, it's a very cool thing. So.
Sure. It's very big. I'm so glad that we still have, and I don't know how many people still go to the library. I love the library. I live over by the Edgemoor Library, over by the rec center, and in that library right there. And we go there all the time, and we get the books out for the little kid, and then stuff for the wife and I. And I mean, now I don't get a whole lot of chance to read all the time, but when I do get a chance to, I love being able to go. And I'm so glad that we are focused in the community for something like the public library, because it is something that gets overlooked so much all the time, but it is really important for the community to have.
Well, and also our libraries have totally changed from what you and I grew up with. I grew up going to the Rockwell Library as well.
Okay.
Well, I know you didn't grow up going there, but I did.
Sure.
And it's completely changed from those times. Now they are advanced learning centers, and they're complete with not only books, but also DVDs, audios. There are computers. There's resource materials beyond what we ever had. And so now there's all these other forms of media that make up the library. We've also done a very cool thing now. We give you a receipt. Every time you check out materials, if you look at the bottom of that receipt, it tells you how much you saved by using Wichita Library resources.
Oh, wow.
And we had one person at the Westlink Library last year that had thousands of dollars saved in using materials. Now, think about that. That's money that they can put back into the economy, into other things. So
it is extremely important. I'm so glad that we do focus on that. So that's really good. Kind of the transition. I know that this is kind of a little bit calmer meeting over since the last couple of weeks, but the transition from spring or wintertime to spring, getting ready for the summertime, does it start picking up quite a bit when it comes to a lot of agenda issues?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we've already started the work on next year's budget and the next year's capital improvement plan, which is a 10-year plan, but every year it gets adopted for the next year.
Sure.
So that work is already being done at the staff level, and then it starts to come to us for review, and we start to get into it. We actually have to approve both the budget and the capital improvement plan by August. So a lot of work goes into this time of year, laying that out and figuring out, where we're going to be able to spend the money and what we're going to be able to do with it. So
sure. We do have a caller on the line I want to take in a second, but I do want to ask, now that we are getting to summertime, I know, and this may be the question on the phone as well, this was a huge issue last year when we were talking to some of the candidates running for city council, but when it came to the city pools, and now that we're getting towards summertime and we may start opening up those pools again, has there been any discussion or thoughts about what we're going to do with some of the city pools or transitioning them to the what's the other thing?
Spray parks.
The spray parks or whatever. Yeah. What's the discussion that we've heard the latest on those?
So the plan that we adopted last year, the Aquatics Master Plan, had in it 3 pools and 7 splash pads. And 2 of those splash pads were in new parks that don't have them at all. So that's what we approved, and then later we adopted another $4 million to build a 4th pool somewhere northeast to replace the McAdams pool that we closed.
Okay.
So that is the current plan. 4 total pools in 4 different sections of the city, and then 7 splash pads throughout.
Okay.
Recently, they released a RFP to find a designer to create a master plan and design all of the pools at the same time and all of the splash pads at the same time. The logic being, save money by doing it all at once instead of hiring it out every year and having to start over. So they are reviewing those contracts and deciding which one they're going to hire. The plan is to have that design work started this year. And then I think the first build out, it starts in 19.
Okay.
For the first splash pad. And I think that is McAdams.
Okay. What about I know being around at Edgemoor, I mean, we've had that pool right there, and I think the 2.5 years I've been here, I don't remember seeing it open the last few years.
No.
Is that any plans for that one?
No, that's going to have a splash pad.
It is going to have a splash pad,
right.
Okay.
Understand that pool, when it was open, and it's a big pool.
Sure.
I grew up going to that pool, so that's where I learned how to swim.
Sure.
It was losing a foot of water a night.
And holy
Not
cow.
to evaporation. It was
it's just leaking somewhere, yeah.
And we couldn't find where. And I served on the park board for 8 years and was part of the park board that closed Edgemoor because of that. We also had a pool out west at Country Acres that was experiencing the same thing. We had to close it. And you're losing a foot of water a day in a pool that size, and you can't figure out where it's losing from. You've got issues. And so that pool was closed. And we've targeted a splash pad. Now, we haven't determined where that $4 million new pool could be. Could it be back at McAdams? Possibly. Could it be at Edgemoor? Possibly. It's also been suggested maybe do a partnership with the Boys and Girls Club up on 21st, and maybe it goes up on their footprint. So, I mean, there's a lot of decisions still to be made on the location of that pool. So, yeah.
Sure. And I'm sure that putting in a splash pad is probably cheaper than redigging out an entire new pool and digging it, like for Edgemoor to take out the old one, put in a new one sort of thing. It's probably a lot cheaper to just say, hey, here's a splash pad.
For multiple reasons. A brand new pool is a $4 million plus investment. A splash pad's $750,000.
Okay.
A pool can operate from end of May to Labor Day. Very short window.
Sure.
They don't have lights, so they don't operate at night. A splash pad can open in April and run till October. They're lighted. They don't require staff.
Sure.
There's no lifeguards that you have to pay. They're a lot safer because there's no risk of accidental drowning.
Sure.
They can be enjoyed by people of all abilities.
It's true.
So splash pads have a lot more opportunity for relief during heat than a standard pool does.
And the cost effectiveness.
And we have a great Y system that have fantastic pools too. So
sure. No,
we're
absolutely
competing against them.
That is true. I appreciate it. 721-825-5721 Talk. If you have a question for City Councilman Bryan Frye here, let's take a phone call, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, good morning, gentlemen. This is Randy. How you doing?
Randy, what's happening, sir?
Hey, I got a question on the library move. One, you said you saved $150,000 plus on your bid. What is the move costing? And then why is it that the people who work at the library can't figure out how much shelf space they need for what they have in the library and checked out? I mean, it's ridiculous to have to outsource that portion. I understand outsourcing the move and the cleaning, but the rest of this, I mean, yeah, great service, but I don't understand why the library people aren't keeping track of that already.
Well, Randy, they are keeping track. First off, your first question, the cost. The total contract is $191,000 for the move and the cleaning and the organization. One of the things that they're wanting to do with this move is categorize a better layout for the facility and making sure that everything that they have is accountable and in a better system than what it is right now. And again, it's I can't remember the total number of materials, but it's in the hundreds of thousands, I believe.
So it's just kind of a new layout of the entire thing, and we want to make sure that, as they rebuild it and restructure it, that we're going to have enough. I mean, and is it kind of a package deal on there? I mean, as they're doing the move, as they're doing the cleaning, oh yeah, we also do this as well as part of the service.
Absolutely. And the other nice thing about this is this company, it's all of their own staff. They don't outsource any of it. So it's the team that starts it, finishes it, and it's over a 3-week period, I believe, of moving materials. They'll have to be handled with care and organized and labeled correctly. Dion Leffler from the Wichita Eagle has a fantastic article in today's Eagle about this. So, I mean, it's got a little bit more in depth, but
sure,
it's more than just, like I said, two guys in a van moving stuff. It's very detailed, very organized. And again, they have to make sure that they're accounting for not only everything that they see, but everything that's checked out and in other locations, and it's making sure that there's room and a shelf space that accommodates all that. So
there's a lot goes into it. Randy, great question. I appreciate that very much. 316-728-8255. We got about a minute left here. I never realized there was so much that went into rebuilding and restructuring a library. So that's kind of fascinating.
We don't do it very often, right?
Yeah, we don't do that a whole lot. So very good. But as you mentioned, this meeting today, not necessarily the most heated when it comes to discussion, but still important. If anybody wants to show up to that, where and how can they do so for the city council meeting?
So today's meeting is consent. It starts at 9:30. With the number of items on it, it'll probably be done by 9:40.
Okay.
It's going to be a pretty quick meeting. There are a lot of interest right now for people with fireworks issue. All of our DABs, our district advisory boards, are hearing the different proposals. I believe it's coming back to us on April 10th for an update. So if you get a chance to go to one of the district advisory boards to share your opinions on fireworks, that'd be great. My DAB, District 5, is Monday, April 2nd at 6:30 at Fire Station 21's, which is 21st and 135th Street. So if you want to come and let us know your thoughts on the fireworks proposals, that'd be great. And I know the other DABs would welcome them as well.
Sure. Very good.
One last thing.
Yeah, go for
it. Quick happy birthday to Councilmember Jeff Bluebaugh. He celebrated his birthday yesterday.
Hey, there we
go.
go.
If you're listening, Jeff, happy birthday, brother.
Fantastic. Well, we appreciate you coming in every week as you usually do. Great information. And now the summertime is going to be coming before we know it.
Yeah.
It's going to be a hot
crossed.
and heavy one. Yeah, fingers crossed. Hopefully we can see some nice warm weather for that. Bryan Frye, City Council member, always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
We'll talk to you again next Tuesday. Let's take a break, wrapping up hour number 2. Some more calls on the line. We'll get to you in a second as well. Don't go anywhere. This is the Voice of Reason.
You're listening to the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, welcome back into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number 2 right here on the Big Talker, KQAM. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. Thanks again to Bryan Frye, City Councilman for Wichita City Council. We'll get him back on again next Tuesday. Our county update will be tomorrow, 7:45. County Commissioner Jim Howell, he'll be joining us on the show then, so stay tuned in for that. I never really thought about it, moving an entire library and how much would actually go into something like that with the restructuring. And look, I mean, if we try and revitalize, if we try and set up a new whole setting up area, staging area, if we try and reorganize it a little bit, I'm sure there's a lot that goes into it. With how many books they can carry, maybe they can widen the capacity to where they can carry more books. That'd be great. I tell you what, one thing that I am a big fan of when it comes to the public sector is the public libraries. It is a way for the opportunity for individuals who maybe going through the educational system, the K through 12 system, to where we're spending bukus of dollars and we're not getting anything out of it, really. We're not getting the education that we necessarily need from it. We're not getting the lessons learned that we need to. Right there, go to the public library. How many people do you think actually got their education or learned about certain things or learned details of what they needed to through the public library system? And I think that's something that we need to hold on to. I know it's not necessarily as popular nowadays because of the fact that everything's online and we don't necessarily look at books much longer. If you come to my house one day, and I may do pictures of this sometime, I have 5 bookshelves in my home. 5 bookshelves, and I love it because I am a book guru. I haven't read half of them because I haven't had the chance yet, but I love them. And one of these days I'll be able to sit down and read all of these books, because it's so important for us to stimulate the mind. And whether it's e-files of books, but I don't like that because then you don't get to see the pretty books. You don't get to see the pretty collage of them. One of these days, when I make it buku money and I'm doing really well and whatever, I'm going to have literally a library room to where the entire room is nothing but just bookshelves as walls. That's what I want. I want it to be my own personal library. And the public library system, as a kid, I used to love it. You go there, you get the book, you have some fun, you read it, you come back. And now, they're right, you got the DVDs, you got the videos, you got the audio tracks, you got whatever. It is such a unique way for individuals who may not be getting what they need out of the K-12 system in order to go and enjoy a library book and read and self-teach themselves. And individuals that actually have that type of fire, that actually want to do that on their own, shows the kind of person that they are to where they want to go out and they want to learn. They want to go out and take the step above and beyond because no one's forcing them to go there. So I think if we are going to invest any money at the city level with your taxpayer money, I think it should be something like public libraries. Because the K through 12 system obviously ain't working and making it the way that we actually need to. We got about a minute before the top of the hour. Let's squeeze in a phone call. Let's get your take on this. Good morning. What's your name?
This is Jim.
Hey, good morning, Jim.
On the public libraries, the printed book has a great advantage.
Yes.
It is not as easy to edit and change the history to fit the current political situation.
Sure.
The old textbooks, when I was in school 50 years ago, we were still using some history textbooks that were printed before World War II.
Wow.
Then we got new textbooks that were printed, in the 1950s.
Sure.
But by the time I got to the sixth grade, they started getting new textbooks every year, and I noticed a lot of changes that took place.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it was an extra new, good information, but sometimes they simply removed whole sections and put in new sections
New stuff.
that fit.
A new agenda. No, you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, they can come out and they can change them, but they got to come out with a new edition of the book, and you still have that old copy, which means that you're still going to get some of that information. You can really tell the drastic difference between some of those. That's a great point, Jim. I appreciate that, because how important are books? Yeah, right there. You can tell the difference. And when they want to change something, they have to come out with the new version, the new copy, the new edition, which is fine, but let's compare it a little bit. You do that e-file. Who knows what they're changing on a dime and whether that old file is still going to be available to you. Learning the information before we actually started to manipulate the agenda of what they wanted you to learn. That's a great point. Hour number 3 coming up. Stay tuned.
Speak. It's time for Reason.
But if they disagree with you, then you're not actually promoting freedom of speech. You're actually promoting hate speech. Because in today's times, anything that offends you, that makes you feel uncomfortable, is no longer a freedom of speech, but is now hate speech. If you say, I love Donald Trump, that is now considered fascist hate speech because you're probably a white supremacist and you don't have any place in society.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, yeah, welcome into the Voice of Reason, making it happen in hour number 3, broadcasting live out of Wichita, Kansas, right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. Simulcasting on KGPT TV, channel 2610. Welcome aboard. It's great to have you along today on a hashtag Patriotic Tuesday. We are less than a week away from Easter. It is insane to even think about. It is wild that this year has gone by so fast. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, we'd love to hear from you. We have a lot to get to in this hour as we have touched on a few items, and we want to readdress those throughout this hour, along with your phone calls as well. But I am excited to get her back on the show as we are now getting into the nitty-gritty of the end of the legislative session. What's going to come out of it? More tax hikes, maybe a repeal of some of your Second Amendment rights. Maybe we can go with a research study from our education that says that we apparently have 29,000 people in ridiculous small little tiny communities where there are a total population of 1,700. But nonetheless, there are 29,000 plus students in those districts. So to talk about that and more with what's to come for the ending with the last few weeks of the session, State Representative Brenda Landwehr back with us. Brenda, how are you this morning?
Well, you know what? When you play those intro of that music, it just kind of pumps up my day and starts it out great. So I'm doing pretty good for being in Topeka, Andy.
Well, I love it. That's what we got to do. I tell you what, it is a ongoing battle every single day with what you have to go through up there in Topeka with a more progressive legislature, even with many Republicans, and there is a majority in both chambers. But I cannot believe the boldness. Now, I know the shootings have an effect with this that's been happening over the country and the March for Our Lives and all the other shenanigans, but I would have thought during an election year that you guys would have done as much as you possibly could to avoid gun votes this year, because many of these Republicans don't want to vote against the NRA and have a bad NRA rating going into an election year saying, please re-elect me back into my seat again.
Well, I think there's a lot of us, Andy, that I don't look at how an organization rates me when I decide how to vote. And, I think those on, both sides of the aisle, we have a lot that do that. It gets the rhetoric of, well, you can't vote against the NRA or the NRA controls you, and that's not what really happens up here. We have people that have a passion for protecting our rights, our constitutional rights, and, primarily to be able to protect our own families.
Sure. No, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, we shouldn't be looking at the rating of a certain group, but just the fact that there are a lot of gun owners in the state, I would be very wary of, or at least I would be as a Republican in there, of wanting to vote against a lot of gun legislation promoting the Second Amendment and then going back to my gun owner friends and saying, please reelect me.
Well, you'd think that would kind of happen, and I think what we've got is now we have, unfortunately, teenagers being used with the sad occurrence that happened in Florida, going out and saying that the guns should be taken away, et cetera. And there was an interesting picture that I actually posted on my Facebook yesterday of the shoes that were left behind after they had their rally in D.C.
Sure.
And then in comparison was the shoes from the world devastation of what occurred during the Holocaust.
Wow.
And you're just like, okay, think about this. This is what gun control did. Taking the guns away. This is what gave us the Holocaust, or part of it.
Sure. No, absolutely. I mean, we need to remember these things. We don't necessarily remember parts of history that are extremely important, especially in our K through 12 educational system today, to where we don't get that type of information. Speaking of, by the way, I don't want to focus a whole lot on the guns. We've talked about it ad nauseum, and I'm getting really sick of talking about school safety and so on and so forth. But I do want to ask, when it comes to K through 12 education, we talked with State Representative Leo Delperding right after the school study came out. What was your take on this study? It says we need close to $2 billion worth of additional funding. Is that feasible, Brenda? What do we do from here on out?
Well, $2 billion is not feasible, nor do I think it's reasonable. And second of all, we're still trying to dive into it. There's a lot of data to look at, find out, what, when she makes a statement, what data does she use to make that statement? One of the things that really stuck out for some of us is that there's nothing talked about on how teachers should get raises. We base teachers' raises on how many years they've been teaching, not on whether or not they're a quality teacher or the best teacher in a classroom. And that's something that really needs to change.
That it does. I mean, that's what we need to focus on. Is there any way that we can focus on and put some priority and put some responsibility back onto the local school boards? I mean, we need to start looking at, other than just, hey, the state legislature didn't give us enough money, is what we hear from the local school boards all the time, to you're the ones that actually break down where all the money goes. Last time we gave you a whole bunch of new money, you ended up increasing the salaries and hired new administrators rather than actually giving the teachers the salary hikes that they actually needed. And if we're going to give you any more money, it's up to you to be responsible enough to actually decide where that money's going to go. And we need to start taking the focus away from the legislature and back to the local school boards.
Well, it really does, Andy. It's because once we release that money to the school boards, they have the power to spend it how they see fit and where they see fit. And if they prioritize improperly, they just come back and say, oh, we need more, we don't have enough. Whereas if you and I budget improperly, spend improperly, and deciding that taking a trip is more important than making our house payment, then that's a problem. And I think that's what we're seeing. And the people need to really understand that, talking to their local school board members, writing to their local school board members, attending the meetings, and hoping that they will give you the opportunity to talk, because some school board members, and I think we actually had a couple that were ousted in the last election, that didn't think that they had to really listen to the people. They listened to the administrator of the school district and not the people who elected them.
Well, come on, Brenda. I want to be able to go on a trip, and if I come back and I can't afford my mortgage payment, all I have to do is go back to my boss and say, you need to give me more money, and you need to cut out the expenses out of your business because I need to spend more money, and that's just the way it is.
Well, if I was your boss, I'd say, well, thank you, Andy. It's been nice working with you. You're fired.
When can we start doing that for our legislature? Because now we're hearing, I've read numerous different news articles saying that now, oh, you know what? It's a great idea. Maybe we should double or triple your property tax rate. Oh, maybe we should increase the sales tax rate, even though we have some of the highest sales tax in the country. Oh, maybe we should start implementing internet sales tax because we're losing out on that revenue. Then I saw the story from the Wichita Eagle saying, hey, we should probably start getting rid of some exemptions and write-offs on your taxes because look at all the lost revenue from the government with you being able to write stuff off on your taxes.
Well, people need to remember is that when you talk about the government losing revenue, it means that they either started taking less out of your pocket, or there's not enough jobs out there. People aren't making money. So, then the revenues decrease because government doesn't create a product like a business does. They only get money if they take it out of somebody's pocket. And, unfortunately, people have a tendency to spend other people's money more freely than they would their own. There is less accountability to the voters on the K-12 budget compared to a lot of the social services budget that I have the privilege of chairing a committee on. And it's like, where's the accountability? How do we know? Does building a brand new building really improve the education of child? We had someone stand before the K-12 budget committee last week that said, did you know that a child does not get a good education in an older building? And I'm like, wow, that's amazing because my grandkids are doing pretty good in a building that was built in 1955.
Well, let me tell you,
teacher.
It is the teacher. It's the environment and the teacher, not necessarily what surrounds them when it comes to the walls. I mean, when I did a missions trip out to Sri Lanka right after the tsunami, and let me tell you, there were children that were being taught in an open room that had no windows, that had the weather coming down on them all the time, whether it was wind, rain, it doesn't matter. They were out there in the open. It was almost like a canopy of a picnic that you'd have it out at the park, and that's where they were learning their education. Let me tell you, their graduation rates are extremely high, so I'm not too concerned about what surrounds them with walls.
No, I think the focus has to be in the classroom, and that's something back in 2005 during the Montoy case, when that decision came down, is, we tried to say, okay, 65% of all the funds have to go into the classroom. And it's interesting how they will argue that, we're doing that, and they'll put expenses in there that they call it, well, it's part of the classroom, but yet when we do studies, they say, no, that can't be accounted for, what's being spent on a child, and it's kind of ridiculous. I think the other thing that we're dealing with, Andy, in our K-12 system is, we talk about school safety. Well, where a lot of that starts, and that's dealing with some of the mental health issues that we have in our state and across our country. I learned here a couple weeks ago in talking to some teachers that we have kindergarten teachers that are now stressed out. They're not necessarily enjoying what they're doing because of the behavioral health issues that children are coming to school with. And I think we need to make sure that all of the money that we're spending on pre-K programs, so prior to starting kindergarten, that money gets accounted and that those programs are doing what they're supposed to do. It's important and that we work on this mental health piece that I think we're going to be able to do a pilot project this year. I'm very, very excited about it. We're working out the details right now that we can actually get 24/7, 365 mental health services for our kids in school rather than just at the school building. And some work on our foster care, because our foster care kids suffer a lot in the K-12 system because they get bounced from one place to another.
Sure.
And here's what happens, Andy, is it was really devastating here a couple of weeks ago on a couple of the budgets. One was dealing with the Department of Children and Family, and they stripped all the spending that we had done in the budget committee from the 19 because they said, no, we don't have enough money. We're concerned we're not going to be able to handle the K-12 budget, so we're going to pull this funding. And it's like, okay, so when people are complaining about children missing from foster care, they didn't want to fund an additional investigator so that we can go out and find those kids, pick those kids up, and bring them back.
Sure.
They argued over $90,000 travel expenses. Well, Andy, when you send someone out to pick up a couple of kids, which right now we're doing in California, that means 2 workers have to go out. You can't send just one.
Sure. No, absolutely. I mean, it's a huge issue that we need to address. I mean, we have a lot of issues that need to be addressed in the state other than just the K through 12. And when we sink all the money into the K through 12, that really ties the hands of every legislature to say whether it's the foster care system like this, whether it's trying to make things a little more efficient, whether it's trying to audit some of the other programs and departments, that we don't have the opportunity to do so because for whatever reason, the iron grip control that the Department of Education, the special interest, the teachers unions for education have on the legislature and on all of the legislation that happens in Topeka is really troubling because we can't focus on the right things that we need to.
Well, and that's what happens is foster care suffers. The Appropriations Committee pulled the money we put out for some mental health homes because right now we're at capacity at our mental health hospitals here in Kansas. We don't have enough services in the community. Law enforcement is doing everything within their power not to incarcerate people dealing with mental health issues, and their hands are getting tied because they have nowhere to place them. We will have individuals handcuffed to a gurney in a hospital waiting to find somewhere to go. We will have an officer that's sitting in a hotel room with an individual until we can find some place where they can go. So these are the programs that are suffering. You know, public safety, our highway patrol, our Department of Corrections, folks working out there at our prisons. How do we deal with water quality and make sure that Kansas is getting the water that they're supposed to and that quality is good? Dealing with senior services, making sure that the Medicaid reimbursement rates are there so that seniors do have the ability to have nursing homes and other facilities to be able to get services or to get the home and community-based services so they can be served in their community. Sure. Our disabled community out there as well. I mean, it's just getting kind of to the point where when Alan Roop, the attorney for K-12 lawsuit, said other budgets will suffer, he meant it. And this is who is suffering. It is absolutely appalling, Andy, that these individuals here do not get funding for their programs. And you know why? Because they don't have the largest lobbying group in Topeka.
No,
they
absolutely.
don't have the groups that can put the pressure or the money. If you look at campaign reports, people worry about, whether a legislator gets money from the NRA or from a utility company or other organizations, but they don't worry about when you have the teachers unions and other education unions backing full tilt legislators to get them elected. And that's a big part of what happened in this last election.
Sure.
And so that's why you've seen that $1.3 billion retroactive tax increase that Kansas just had. And to be looking at another one is kind of crazy, property taxes. The reason that we reduced to the 20 mills back in, I believe that's like 95, 96, had to do with because people were being taxed out of their homes, Andy. Mm-hmm. How would you like to, be in your home for 50 years and be told, I can't afford it anymore. It's paid off, but I can't afford the taxes. How do you do that?
It really exposes, it really does. It really exposes their agenda of the fact that they say that they're there for the children, for the K-12 education system, but it's not even about the children. If they don't want to look at the budget for the foster care system, if they don't want to look at the home life and the parents that actually have to go through this when it comes to their property tax, their income tax, their sales tax, everything that goes along with it, it is troubling and concerning that, but I guess at least it exposes them for the fact that they really don't care about anybody else other than their agenda of getting more money for their special interests, and they benefit from that. So that is very troubling. We got just a couple minutes left here, but I do want to ask you, for the last few weeks of the session, we are talking about the property taxes and different tax rates that may be going up because of this to compensate for the $2 billion. We're talking about more spending. We're talking about, are we going to realistically see more spending come out of this session, or do you think that it's really going to heat up next year after the election once we get into the 2-year budget cycle for 2019?
Well, no, there's going to be more spending, and I can tell you that I've actually been one of them that's wanted to add money to the budget for the programs that we just talked about. Then you'll see the big deal on the K-12 spending, and the House members are worried about doing another tax increase because they just did one last year, and the House is up for re-election. They're like, well, what do we do? Well, it's going back and talking to your community, sitting down and getting people to understand that we have to do a balance here. Because when we talk about K-12, Andy, you look at the safety aspect of things, you look at the mental health, you look at the other services that these schools are trying to provide that maybe should be done somewhere within the community rather than burdened on the schools. And when you have school districts that are hiring more administrators, when you're not seeing as large of an increase in the enrollment, you're like, wait a minute, are we top heavy? Absolutely, we are top heavy. Get that money into the classroom. Get that money into quality teachers. Get that money in there to make sure that the kids have the tools that they need. The other thing, Andy, we need to start looking at is it's a new day in how we should be educating kids and what we should be focusing on. Should a child that's a fifth grader that can do seventh grade math be stuck only doing fifth grade math? No, they shouldn't. It's time to explore different techniques. Let's put more focus on the STEM subjects that we are needing in our workforce today, that employers are requiring.
Sure.
And our universities are looking at more, but the kids are not coming out of our schools with that technology already being started. So it's time to change this. Don't look at how much seat time a kid spends in a classroom. Let's get innovative. Let's actually open up things. Of course, I'm always a big proponent of school choice because I think that, they will take a little bit more risk and not do just the same old. Let's look at something new and something different. And parents need to get riled up. They need to get excited. They need to get involved in campaigns. They need to be calling their legislators, their local school boards, and having those conversations. Just don't just drop Johnny and Susie off at the school every day and pick them up. Get involved, get engaged.
That's really what it is. I mean, it really drives home the idea of quantity over quality, or quality over quantity, if we want to put it right. And right now we have the quantity measure of let's keep them in school as long as we possibly can and keep them away from the family, keep them away from their extracurriculars, keep the parents busy because they're working to pay all the taxes to put them through the school, yet we don't have the quality that comes with that. So we really need to set our priorities straight and get them
Andy,
back on track.
I did want to touch on one other thing that's kind of happening up here that's not making a lot of news, and that's electric rates.
Okay.
We have Kansas is at 13.37 cents per kilowatt. That is higher than any of our surrounding states or even in the Midwest. And Westar has just requested another $54 million rate increase. KCP&L is getting ready to make another request as well. And I had asked in the Appropriations Committee to put a deal on our appropriations bill that would say no more rate increases until an extensive study was done. And the legislators just went nuts. It's like, you can't tie the hands of our electric companies. What do you mean?
Wow.
The KCC has not declined a request over the past 25 times that requests have come. And this is impacting, on top of tax increases, the other increases families are seeing is electric rates. And something has to be done. And people need to know this. They need to understand it. They need to be calling their legislator and say, hey, we want a study. We want to find out why is Kansas higher.
Unbelievable. I'm glad you brought that up. That is the discussion that I do want to have. We're out of time on this one, but I want to get you guys back on to talk about that piece of legislation along with some of the electric rates that we may be seeing, because we have heard of the idea of wanting to cap it, and then for whatever reason, like you mentioned, people panicky the fact that no, they should be able to raise them as high as they want to. So it's a great conversation. I do want to have that at a later time as well. State Representative Brenda Landwehr, we are out of time, my friend. Keep up the great work, though. It's going to be a crazy next few weeks when it comes to the wrap up of the session, but we want to get you back on and to get another update from you soon.
Well, and Andy, we take our first break after a week from Friday. So where there's a lot going to be happening between now and then, so people need to get involved and make sure you get hold of their legislators while they're home before they come back at the end of April.
Knock on their doors. That's what we have to do. State Representative Brenda Landwehr right there. Always a pleasure, Brenda. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you very much, Andy, and keep doing what you're doing.
Hey, that's what we do, my friend. 28 minutes past the hour. Let's take a break. Wrapping up this show. We'll open up lines to you when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Well, we went way long on that last segment. That's all right. Thanks again to State Representative Brenda Landwehr. We love chatting with her with everything going on in Topeka. Got to take a bottom of the hour break. When we come back, we'll open up lines to you. It's a free-for-all for the last half hour of the program. Whatever you want to talk about. Plus, I want to bring back this discussion on special interests and protected classes. I got a little gift to give away if you can answer the question properly. We'll do that when we come back as well. This is The Voice of Reason. Lots more to get to right here on the Big Talker, KQAM.
When it takes two to read the news,
I'm trying to warn everybody and nobody takes me serial.
You're in the wrong place. This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, 1480 AM and 1025 FM. KQAM.
Making it happen today on a Tuesday. Happy #Patriotic Tuesday. As we live the dream, we have more fun than we should be. Advancing conservatism on a daily basis. Why? Because if we don't, nobody else will. And that's the kind of fun that we like to have. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Appreciate all the guests that we've had on the show today, all the phone calls that we've had, and it's open line to you for the last half hour as we wrap up the day today, heading off to work, trying to be productive. You're going to carpe diem all over this daggone place. I know it. I feel it, because it's going to be a great Tuesday. 36 minutes past the hour. Let's go right to them. Line number 2. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, happy Tuesday.
Good morning, Myron. How are you, sir?
I keep telling you, when it is pretty, you have to be good.
There you go. It's a great day in paradise.
Hey, a question I wanted to ask the Senator Landwehr, but something you can ask in the future. They talk about, well, we're going to give teachers raises, or we're going to do this with the state money. Now, my understanding is it's pretty much a blank check. The school board decides who gets raises and what happens. All I'm aware of is they argue over how much money they're going to send to the district.
Right.
Do they have any control? Because we seem to be paying a lot of administrators and not as many teachers.
No, and you're absolutely right. Now, there are certain areas between, like, the transportation for K through 12, and then for, if it's allotted towards maintenance of the schools, and then towards the general fund sort of thing. So there is a little bit of a topical, here's the general direction where this money kind of needs to be allotted to. If you remember the lawsuit that happened, or the potential lawsuit that happened right at the beginning of the legislative session with the individual who had worked in the Department of Education for 30 years, and he was, over the last 15, 20 years, giving additional money to the transportation side of education, more so than what was on the books. And it was a lot of money being sunk in, and what was it, $20 million plus over the last few years that has been going into additionally off the books that he was giving certain districts. And it was a big scandal. Now we just kind of swept it under the rug, and we just forgot all about it because, well, he had been there for so long. He'd given his entire life service to the public service and to the education department, and we'll just legalize it to where it's not that big of a deal, and we'll forget all about it. And now everybody's forgotten it. But the fact is, we do have certain money going towards certain categories in education, but when it comes to the salaries of the teachers versus the administrators, that's coming out of the general fund. So you're absolutely right. That big, massive check that they send to the general fund for education for the district, they say, all right, here you go, school board. Here's the money for the district, for the general funds. Do with it as you will. We'd like to see it go towards teacher pay because you keep complaining about the lack of teacher pay and resources in the classroom. And then what do? They do a 2%, just like last year. They ended up doing a 2% raise on the teacher salaries, while they gave a 6% raise for many of the school board members and the administrators. And then they ended up hiring on here in the Wichita area another deputy superintendent that probably makes another close to 6 figures as well, with bonuses at the end of the year. So the money that's going towards the teachers, or the lack thereof, comes from the decisions from the local school board deciding where that money is going to go when they get that blank check for the general funds.
Yeah, just to me, I consider it being lied to and say, well, we're going to get teachers raises, or it's for the students.
Sure.
It's for the school district.
Yeah. If you hear a state legislator say, I'm going to raise spending for education in order to take care and compensate for the teachers, then you know that they're giving out false information or #fake news, because they don't tell the money where to go to when to go to the general funds of the school district. That's not their prerogative. That's not their decision making. So if they're campaigning saying, I'm going to raise the salary for teachers, either they're going to create an amendment saying that they have now the authority to delegate the local school districts on where their money is appropriated to, or they are just flat out lying to you, because the local school board makes that decision right now, not the legislatures. All they do is just decide how much money that district's actually going to get.
Yeah, just every time I hear some of these things from politicians, I think, I got to go wash the stupid stamp off my forehead, because they're lying to me.
Yeah, well, and a lot of them like to do that. Myron, I appreciate it. It's a great point, and that's something that we need to remember, and we need to reiterate all the time, because, the state legislatures don't do that. They don't appropriate that money to actual salary teachers. That is a contract that the teacher signs with the school district for the school district to hire on the teacher when it comes to the salary and the benefits and so on and so forth. So that's the negotiation process the teacher has to have with the school board, which really brings to another question. How good is the teachers union doing to actually represent these teachers in order for them to get the best salary and the best benefits when they're obviously not fighting for the school board to actually or the school district to take care of the resources in the classroom, when they're throwing more of a fit of the fact that Donald Trump's tax cuts got rid of the write-off that you can do for the teacher spending money into the classroom, as opposed to the fact that they're just not upset with the school boards anyway, saying that you need to cover all the money that goes into actually making the classroom a classroom with the resources in there, as opposed to the teachers purchasing it out of pocket. So what's the purpose of the teachers union again? I forget. I thought it was to represent the teachers for the best possible scenario for them. I don't think that's happening right now. If the teachers union's the ones that's actually negotiating for the teachers on their behalf in order for them to get the best contracts, they're doing a very poor job of that, are they not? 316-721-8255. Let's take another phone call. Good morning. What's your name?
This is Richard.
Richard, what's happening, sir?
Well, you said something that sparked me that just
That's
me
my
over
goal.
the top.
That's what I have to do. That's my job here on the radio. What you got for me?
How come anybody that works for the city, county, state, doesn't matter in what position, but you're working for the people, why do they get a bonus? I've never understood why somebody can get a bonus when they're working for the government.
Well,
the taxpayer.
I can see bonuses here and there if they've done a good job. I mean, it's just like any other job. If you actually put in the effort, if you go above and beyond anybody else, I mean, I can see bonuses. Now, I'm not necessarily in favor of having the legislature vote in their own salary increases, something like that. Or if you are maybe like a superintendent doing every single year bonus increases. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's how they negotiated the contract again with the teachers or with the school board. So I guess congrats to them because they were able to use the school board for their own benefit for a 6-figure income as a superintendent, plus an end of the year bonus, plus salary increases throughout the year and numerous years. So you're right, it does get abused a lot, but I do agree with incentives, whether you're in the private sector or the public sector, that if you do a really good job at your job, then you would get some type of bonus or some type of incentive for continuously doing a good job. I mean, I want workers in the public sector that are actually efficient at their job if we're going to pay them with our taxpayers, with our tax money.
And I agree that some of the smaller ones, but if you're an upper executive administrator being paid by the taxpayer, you should not get a bonus. Look at what happened to the VA because of the bonuses. They cut here, they cut there. Oh, yeah, they're doing a good job saving all this money when they're not. Sure. And so they get a big bonus because of this. And then in this case, the teachers end up suffering over it. So
no, you're right.
I just don't think anybody that works for the government, we say we're going to pay X amount of dollars. If
Sure.
it's not enough, you're not going to get somebody to fulfill that job. A bonus should not ever come into it when you're working for the government.
You're right.
Or
I
the
mean,
taxpayer.
being taxpayer money, we need to be very efficient on where that goes and cost effective. So, I mean, I definitely see your point, Richard. I appreciate that. That if, I mean, we're going to keep tax rates low, then we can't be continuously increasing the pie when it comes to salaries and bonuses and benefits and so on and so forth. We want to take care of them. Don't get me wrong. We do want to take care of them and compensate them for the work that they do, because if we're going to hire somebody on the public dime, then we want them to be happy and efficient at their job rather than just wasting it by, only doing it halfway. But at the same time, you're right. We don't want to abuse that system to where it goes to one direction and not the other, which is what we're seeing right now, especially when it came to the local school districts. And hey, 6% increase for the administrator pay, 2% for the teachers, but we need teacher salary increases, which is why we need to massively increase spending and massively increase your taxes. And it's all going towards one side. So I definitely see your point on that one. Let's go back to the phones. Line number 3. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy.
Good morning. How's it going?
It's going well, thank you.
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, there's lots of things. Are you on a specific subject?
No, it's open for the last half hour. What you got?
Okay, I got, come to find out that we can legally own machine guns in this country.
Sure.
Did you know that?
Yeah. You got to go.
Okay.
No, you have to go through certain. You have to work your way up. You have to apply for certain licenses. You have to wait a certain amount of time, and it's extremely expensive to pass certain tests and get the licenses. But yeah, you can do it.
Okay. All right. I just didn't know you were aware of that.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, there's a gun store in Colorado Springs. Before I got this job, actually, when I was on the sales side, I used to work at a rock station out in Colorado Springs, and I would do sales out there for a little bit. And one guy I always tried to sell, I never got him, but it was and actually he's made national news because everybody thinks he's a nutso, but it was called Dragon Man's Guns or Dragon Man's Firearms or something like that, Dragon Man's. And he owns a very large gun store, and I'm sure there's some around here as well that do that, but he had the regular guns with the rifles and the handguns and so on and so forth. But then he also had the ARs, he had machine guns, he had a range out behind the gun store to where you could actually go and shoot, and he had a mounted 50 caliber on top of a truck, and you could shoot these things. You could pay to shoot, and it was fantastic. It was really fun, and that's what he did. And actually, his wife actually died at it because they were trying to film a movie there, and an explosive went off, and some shrapnel ended up killing her. And he ended up canceling the TV show, but he still has the gun store. He still has the range. He still allows people to purchase a certain amount of time to fire off certain amount of rounds on the 50 caliber. And, it's something that you can do. So absolutely, if you have the right licenses, you can definitely purchase an automatic rifle. It's just a very long process in order for you to do so.
Right, like maybe 30 to 60 day background check.
I think it's more than that. I don't know the details of it, but it's extensive. I mean, you have to wait years in order for you to prove that you purchased these amount of firearms. You have a clean record for years and years. It's thousands and thousands of dollars to apply for these different licenses. So it's a long process.
I heard it was like a $200 processing fee.
It's more than that. It's for a fully automatic rifle, it's thousands of dollars with lots of licenses that you have to and permits you have to get in order to do so. You can, but it's a rigorous process, and I like that process. I like the system that we have set up for that.
Is that a bad thing?
No, I actually like that. I like the opportunity that we have that option, but it is a little more rigorous in order for you to get that. I don't think that should be as a fully automatic, and if something with that large of a caliber shouldn't be in the mainstream like that. Now, I am obviously a strong advocate of the Second Amendment, but I do like the process of saying if we are going to go that extreme on getting those types of firearms, it should be available to you, but we should have a little more of a process. I do not support that type of process for a semi-automatic rifle or something like an AR-15 because that's really the same as any other hunting rifle that you can get.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was amazed. I keep hearing lately that in Brazil, guns aren't allowed. Well, when I lived and worked there, I was walking down the street one day where all these little mom and pop shops are, and I walked by one and looked in there. They have an overhead door they open because the weather's always great.
Sure.
A big overhead door they open, and it's kind of like a flea market atmosphere in a way. It's real nice. And I was walking by one, and I looked in, and they had handguns in there.
Sure.
And so I walked in, and that was before I learned to speak Portuguese very well, but I walked in there and tried and said something like, "Oh, I didn't know you could buy guns in Brazil."
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Oh, yeah, sure. It's, it's a bit expensive, and you got to wait some time, but yeah, you can buy a handgun here." So,
the options are there, but they do make it a little more stringent. You're right. I mean, they got that waiting period, and we've tried it here in the United States, which I'm not a big fan of because it does definitely deter a lot of people. But even for handguns or rifles, they want to put on like an automatic $1,000 sales tax before you even purchase the firearm, and that kind of disincentivizes people to actually want to purchase them, which I'm not a big fan of that stuff. But yeah, in some of those other countries, they make it so expensive to where the average common person there can't afford it, but it is an option for you to purchase if you have the money to do so. So they really only allow the firearms of protection for the elites that actually have enough money and not the poor people that actually struggle every day.
Oh, people like me and you? Or?
Well, yeah. I mean, in that society, I mean, we would be now. I mean, in a lot of these societies, especially if they're a little more on the socialist style or they're a third world country, then yeah, I mean, we'd be scrapping up just enough coin to be able to buy a loaf of bread for the week, and they have 200 times that for the price of a firearm. So it's available to you if you can actually afford it. So I love it. I appreciate the call, my friend. I want to slip in a couple more here before we take a break, but some great points. And yes, you can purchase an automatic rifle with the licensing. I mean, at least you used to be able to. I don't think the laws have changed on that. Maybe they have since all the gun debates that have been happening. But as far as I know, as long as you go through the right process and the licensing and the paying and everything of that, then you can actually get, like I said, you can purchase, at least there you can pay to actually shoot the 50 caliber rifle because he had the right licensing in order to be able to obtain a firearm like that. So kind of a fun process if you are familiar with it. Let's go back to the phones line number 4. Good morning. What's your name?
This is Jim.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, the actual background check the ATF does before issuing a license to own a machine gun is exactly the same as you do to get your concealed carry license. It is, are you an honest person? They take about 6 months to a year to do it.
Okay, so it's just a longer process.
The license, instead of 30 days, it's 6 months to a year. They deliberately delay it as long as possible and make it as difficult as possible.
Sure.
And the cost of buying say an old Vietnam era M16, which cost the government back then about $300-400,
sure,
is now around $20,000 to $30,000 for the gun because everybody wants to recapture the $200 they paid.
Sure.
The real problem is that in 1986, they made it illegal to manufacture new guns for the civilian market. And at that time, there were over 250,000 machine guns legally owned in the United States. And in the next few months, before that new law became effective, the population of guns doubled because people quickly manufactured the serial numbered part of a gun so they could stay in business for a while. In the movies with Schwarzenegger, where he's got that Gatling gun he carries around.
Yes.
You can buy that. You can buy that exact gun. It's available. There's like 3 of them in the country.
Sure.
It's about $180,000, and you need about $90,000 an hour for ammunition.
Well, yeah, one of these days when I have lots of money, then that's going to be the next pet project for me to have. But yeah, you're right. It is extremely expensive, and that's why 99% of the population just doesn't have the appropriate funds or the time or the energy to go through that process. Jim, I appreciate that very much. Got to take a break. 7 minutes to the top of the hour. We'll get your final phone calls as we wrap up the show today. It is a Tuesday. Let's have a little fun with it. This is the Voice of Reason.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up the show today. About a minute left of the program. I do have to, while we have a minute here, I got one out of the final 4 in the March Madness bracket. Sports guys from KGSO, Doug Down, Scott Stiles in here. How's your guys' brackets looking?
Mine's awesome.
Yours is awesome.
I got Kansas winning it all, so I'm good.
So you got Kansas, you got Villanova.
I do.
You got Loyola?
Nope.
No, got
nope.
Michigan? No,
I didn't, and I want Michigan to win it all, if you want to know the truth, because I'm a Michigan fan.
Well, sure. But you didn't choose them to go to the Final 4.
No.
Okay.
I got Villanova left. That's it.
See, me too. That Villanova, that's the last one I got left. We're going to start going through the brackets for the KQM KGSO Challenge. How many of them do you think are actually on the page of what's actually happened?
Well, we collected over 500. I'm going to say 2.
Not that much of a chance.
Well, a lot of people, though, will have KU in the finals.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Filled that out.
Maybe.
So that's a good deal.
I was going through a few of them, and I saw that a lot of them tried to do Wichita State, and some of them tried to do K-State, which K-State got close. Yeah. I mean, K-State did pretty well this year. So
they'll be good next year.
Yeah, they'll be good again next year. So interesting. So it'll be kind of narrowed down quite a bit. It'll be easy on us to be able to grade these brackets because of kind of what happened
Well,
this
we
year.
only have to look at the right side. The left side's completely out. So
there we go.
Kind of like politics. Yeah.
Well, the right side's kind of where it's at. I like the way you think. I like the way you think there. Doug Down, Scott Sound.
I'll be back tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen.
There it is, 6 to 9 for the game plan every day on Sports Radio KGSO. You guys have fun. This is your show, everybody. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is the Voice of Reason. Have a great Tuesday, everybody.